I'm the business leader for the Place team at ESC, and as you said, proud alumni of the hub. So it's brilliant to see so many people here today and to talk to you all, and also proud Northerner. So another reason it's great to be here today. But I think more so, just also I would say I'm a passionate proponent of the importance of place in the net zero transition. It was good to hear Patrick talk a bit earlier about that and kind of how that's being perceived within government. I think clearly, if we're going to do what we need to do on net zero, and particularly sort of mobilise the kind of investment we're going to need to mobilise as quickly as we are, we're going to need to do that on a place basis. The places that we live in, work in, and play in are kind of where things can all come together in terms of decision making, funding and investment and other resources, and kind of mobilising the kind of programmes we're going to need to see. So, really interested in the agenda today to talk a bit more about that. So, first of all, very briefly on on Energy Systems Catapult. We're one of the Catapult network. We're an independent innovation centre, and our mission is all about accelerating energy innovation towards net zero. We kind of work across a number of different domains, if you like, from homes up to whole systems and networks. I work in the Place team at Energy Systems Catapult, and our work is all about understanding how we can help places accelerate the net zero transition through energy innovation. Now, a big part of that for us has been about local area energy planning. I think this is a concept that the Catapult originated some years ago now, and I'll come on to a bit of the timeline around that. But really, the whole purpose around what I will continue to call LEAP, Karen. Thank you for setting that precedent. Although it doesn't quite spell LEAP, but it's a better way to say it. It was, what Patrick again referred to earlier around, 2017, 18, 19, starting to see climate emergency declarations from local government, and a real kind of impetus to act around net zero. But the obvious next question is, how and what do we do, and how can we give some shape to that ambition, and what needs to be done and delivered? And that's where LEAP comes in. So LEAP is a whole energy system based approach to answer that question. It is led by local government, but with input from key stakeholders. We think local government's the right place for this to be led because of the kind of democratic accountability of local institutions, and also that kind of convener enabler role that Patrick was referring to earlier. And a local area energy plan identifies the cost-effective integrated plan to deliver on the local and national net zero target across the place's energy system. So it's about understanding what's the right thing to do in the right place at the right time, and what might that cost. So it's a level of detail akin to a master plan, but the whole crux of the approach is it takes a whole systems approach, looks across the whole energy system, and identifies the right thing to do at the right time. So there's a 7-stage process, which I won't go through stage by stage. Karen sort of set out some of these principles in her slides earlier. A big part of this is about stakeholder engagement, and the first couple of stages are all about understanding who needs to be involved in this. It's led by local government, but other primary stakeholders, clearly include the energy networks, for example. And then the first part of the process, or the third stage, is then about understanding the current system. What's the lay of the land? What's currently there, and getting a good picture of what exists. But then the forward-looking bit is really important from that point. So understanding, right, what's the net zero target for this place? What needs to be achieved by when on the energy system? And what are the different pathways that could be taken to achieve that target? And doing some modelling around that to understand what those different pathways look like, what the different trade-offs are in those different scenarios and different pathways, but then refining that down to a single pathway to understand, what's the agreed path to deliver on the target by the chosen date, and in a cost-optimised way. So looking at where the most efficient interventions are to deliver at the right place at the right time. And then the plan is created at the end of that. I think one thing I wanted to really highlight in this slide as well is that forward pathway planning bit is really important in looking at different scenarios. What you're able to do by taking that approach is understand, okay, no matter what we assume in terms of some of the macro scenarios for this place, whether you assume high hydrogen or high electrification, what are the projects that keep occurring in the same places in every scenario? So, for example, if a cluster of houses always appears to have, the best cost solution being heat pumps, regardless of what other big levers you pull and assume, then you can consider that intervention to be a low regret intervention from a net zero point of view. So by taking this kind of scenario-based forward-looking approach, you can identify the low regret interventions that need to be delivered on an energy system. So we're at the point now where, we're seeing some places that have had a local area energy plan for a while. The Northeast is a part of the country that's really pushed some of the boundaries on this, Katie, with York and North Yorkshire and the programme that you did probably about 18 months ago now. It was finalised, something like that. Maybe not a bit less than that, about a year. But also and I'll come on to kind of give an overview of exactly where in the country's progressed this. But we're starting to see some real impact stories come through of kind of what's the outcome of this process been, what value is it delivered. I guess a couple of the two blue boxes on the screen there speak to one particular trend I'd like to highlight around financeable, fundable, investable projects and pipeline building from having a plan. One quote there talking about delivering a pipeline of projects that can be sort of discussed with the UK Investment Bank. And the second one about really getting into the detail of where, potentially viable business cases for solar and EV infrastructure projects can be identified, and 80% of the projects that came out of the LEAP were determined to be commercially viable for that. And then the other two boxes there are about a trend around policy connection and coordination. I think another thing we're seeing by going through this LEAP process, which is really stakeholder-led, is that by getting the right people around the table and looking at integrating existing plans and policies, so that includes network plans, regional transport plans, spatial plans, where there's new development expected within the place, you can start to really gather a coordinated approach and an integrated plan so that the LEAP represents, an integration of all those different levers and priorities for the place. And we're starting to see things now like local area energy plans informing local spatial plans, and also, LEAPs informing where, for example, new housing development can take place. Based on where there is or isn't constraint on the grid into the future, where the best places are for those things to happen. So I think just some headline benefits of this process. That coordination of policy is a really important point. That investment point I made as well is really important. I think, and I'll sort of go into that in a little bit more detail shortly, but for me, again, back to the point about multiple stakeholders being involved in this, by having a coordinated plan which sets out what needs to happen, you can start to think about how to align investment around that plan, not just public sector investment, but private sector investment, how that can be attracted, and also what that might mean for decision making in terms of network investment and business planning cycles. I think the point I made earlier about being able to identify low regrets decisions as well is really important. And also by taking a whole systems approach to planning for a place, you can give confidence to some of the big decisions that need to be made in terms of, again, network investment. Where's the right place to reinforce a network versus where's the right place to maybe think about other approaches? Where are some of the big infrastructure decisions that need to be taken? Where's the right place to put heat networks? All those sorts of decisions can be made with greater confidence, because actually they're not just kind of opportunistic bottom up. That looks like a good place for a heat network sort of a decision. We've got a holistic whole systems plan for our place, with a view to our target, and therefore what's the right thing to do at the right place at the right time, and give confidence to those decisions, but also those projects as investments that aren't going to become stranded assets. These are just some examples from outputs from a local area energy plan. Some of the things that we're able to do through a LEAP. Identifying focus zones for different technologies, identifying where you have clusters of interventions, packages of interventions that make sense in particular locations, where there are focus zones for things like heat pumps, heat networks, EV charging hubs, different packages of measures from a retrofit perspective, and then what that looks like overall for the entire place. One case study I wanted to talk about in a little bit more detail is Greater Manchester. I think Greater Manchester was the first sort of UK region to adopt LEAP as a consistent approach across the geography. About a year and a half ago, we finalised this programme with GM. ESC delivered 10 LEAPs, one for each district in Greater Manchester, and this is just some of the outcomes I think we're seeing from that programme. Some really important. There's a really important articulation of the scale of intervention that's needed now for GM. So we're able to say across all 10 districts, what's the total number of interventions that are needed, down to heat pumps in what locations, where there's opportunities for renewable energy generation, what that looks like, by borough, for the whole region, and then given visibility to that level of investment. So, for example, in Bolton, that's £5.1 billion worth of investment that's needed. That includes network reinforcement to deliver their net zero ambition by 2038, or carbon neutrality ambition by 2038. And we've seen that now start to actually catalyse the private sector interest in the place. So, I was in Manchester last week on Monday at the Green Summit there. It was fascinating to hear, Andy Burnham on stage talking about the LEAP programme and how that's led them to be able to say, right, for Greater Manchester, we know we need £70 billion worth of investment to deliver on our net zero target across the system. We know a proportion of that is business as usual investment we're going to do anyway. There's about £12 billion we need to identify and catalyse. And they're coming to market now with, heat network programmes, renewable energy generation programmes and procurements to start to leverage that. Someone from SSE came up to me and said, ASC did the LEAPs, brilliant. We've looked at the LEAPs that were in the public domain. As a private sector developer, started to see, right, where are the locations that might present developable PV projects, and sort of approach the local authorities in those places to start to try and develop up those projects. And I think SSE have looked at the LEAPs as this is a plan that the place has been involved in. It's sort of approved and signed off. That those projects have a level of buy-in, and we want to try and get them moving with the right partners. Wales as well, just to highlight, Wales has taken quite a bold decision to get on and do it across the country. So we're working with Welsh Government, which is absolutely fantastic to be involved in, where Welsh Governors at devolved administration have said, we've decided local area energy planning is the approach you want to have adopted for every local area in Wales. They're funding each local authority to deliver a LEAP, and ESC is acting in a technical advisory capacity to them to support that process. They've embedded local area energy planning in a requirement around developing plans within the planning policy framework in Wales to sort of really give it some teeth. And their vision is that by having full and complete coverage of plans across Wales, they'll be able to use that as an evidence base to inform a national energy plan, which we'll be supporting them with into next financial year. So some fascinating stuff going on in Wales to learn from. Didn't expect this slide to be animated, but there you go. Someone has done that for me, which is brilliant. This is just a bit of a timeline around LEAP, I think, to show kind of where it started and where it's come to. I think the original concept was probably 8 to 10 years ago, was originated within the Catapult. One of the early pilots for LEAP was in Newcastle. I think, David, you were involved in that one in some depth. I think the concept has come on some way since the early stages. I think some of the main kind of milestones to highlight in this journey. In 2022, we were funded by Innovate UK to produce some guidance to sort of codify, if you like, how a local area energy plan should be delivered, the methodology for that, and that goes into some detail. And we're delighted to see other practitioners coming into the market now to deliver plans. This isn't just an Energy Systems Catapult thing. This is something that we want to see adopted much more widely. So, Arup, Bureau Happold, City Science, a lot of other consultants are now delivering local area energy plans to that guidance. And this slide I think is really interesting, just to show what the national picture looks like. I think the sort of deeper pink on the map are places that have a local area energy plan, as we would call it, to the guidance. Not just the ones that ESC has delivered, but ones that other practitioners are delivering too. And then the lighter pink is where there's a plan in progress, or places actively working towards a local area energy plan. And then the blue you can sort of consider as a sort of a building block. That's more of a baselining exercise, but not specifically a LEAP. So, nearly 17%, and actually probably more than that now, given some announcements in recent weeks, of local authorities in the UK have or are working towards a local area energy plan as the chosen approach to develop a plan. And LEAP is one way to do it. I guess there are other things you can do, other approaches you can take. I guess I'm observing there's a bit of a tipping point around LEAP as a specific methodology. We think it's really robust. We think the things that it can do around giving you the specifics of the interventions, that need to be delivered, the scale of the investment, and that degree of actual project identification within a coherent pathway means that this is the right approach, or certainly the approach that will deliver, real optimum impact. And I think, this for me is where the hubs are really important. There's some regional coordination going on here, and we're doing as much as we can do as the Catapult to share best practice, to advise and to inform. But there is still a patchwork of approaches across the country. And I think the hubs can play a really important role in terms of creating as much consistency as possible and maximising the outcome of these exercises as much as possible. And there is certainly a benefit of regional coordination of this kind of exercise. This is my last slide, which I won't dwell on in any great detail, but just to point out, talked a lot about local authorities, the local government role in this being a leadership role. Local area energy planning must speak to other stakeholders in the space, and that really does include network operators in particular. There's a big question at the minute, lots of proposals from Ofgem around how regional system planning can be undertaken and what the role is of local government and places in informing network plans. We think there's an important role for LEAP as a robust, evidence-based, stakeholder-led methodology to help inform what happens with the network investment process. And this is just a case study which we've got online, you can have a look at, about how we've worked with UK power networks to help them understand what they can do as an enabler within the LEAP kind of methodology and LEAP process. And they're being really proactive in this space as well. But I think just wanted to end on that note as well. There's loads of great progress with LEAP. It's been on an innovation cycle. There's still innovation work to do with LEAP as an approach and a methodology. It's not perfect yet. Digitization, making it a bit more dynamic, speed, trying to make it as cost effective and affordable as possible. All of these things are things we still need more work. And really pleased to be working on some of that already with partners in the North East and Yorkshire hub. But hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview of kind of what LEAP is, where it's come from, who's doing it, what we think some of the benefits are. Absolutely shameless plug that we published a report a couple of weeks ago, which captures some of this as a bit of a state of the nation. Check it out if you haven't got more information there, but if not, I'm around for questions and further conversation. So thank you very much.